In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Nathan Lutz, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies and knights, to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I am your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host and former roommate from the University of Tennessee, Dustin Melbardis. How are you doing, sir?
Evolve for life. I'm doing great. Love thinking back to those times back in Andy Holt Tower and ready to record.
You know, I think we should get somebody else who was Russell's former roommate from Andy Holt Tower from the floor above the year after. Moving on up, here we go, Mr. Byron Figaro. How are you doing, sir?
Great. Happy to be here. Evolve for life.
That's right. And also, if you recognize Byron's name, one of the earliest episodes we did was Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, and that was a fun episode to the Wild West. So, just a plug to the old episode that we had done there before as well. So, Byron, we got to know you a little bit there. We want to get to know you a little bit better here now. What's the last movie you saw?
Last movie that I saw was the Snyder Cut.
Oh yeah, what'd you think about that?
I thought it was better. I thought it was a lot better than the Josh Whedon cut.
Yeah. So it's worth the time investment for you then.
Yeah. I thought it was fun.
I want to know why it's worth it. What is something that makes that worth it? Because I need to be kind of coaxed or coerced into seeing this.
I would say that there was more continuity throughout the movie than in the Josh Whedon cut. I feel like the original version just kind of felt like it was patchworked together. Like some of the scenes didn't really mesh as well with each other, and it just felt like there was a more consistent vision, I think, in the Snyder cut.
What you described is one of my pet peeves with movies, a thing that will make me kind of turn off from a movie. So I'm glad to hear that. Awesome.
Dustin, what about you? What's the last movie you saw?
Aside from what we are talking about today, I rewatched, as I tend to do, Catch Me If You Can with Tom Hanks and Leo and Christopher Walken. Just a classic from several years ago, and something about this movie we're covering just made me get into that headspace.
Catch Me If You Can. Okay, I've tried. You're here too fast.
I mean, I can't spoil that movie. We're going to talk a lot about another one, but I can't spoil that one for our listeners.
Okay, and for me, the last movie I saw was Argo from 2012. So this is the Ben Affleck starred and directed movie about going into Iran and rescuing some, I guess, not necessarily hostages, but people in a sticky situation to get them out, and under the guise of a fake movie. You know what? It's a lot of fun. Like, it's not hilarious fun, but it's very interesting. And given the drama of the high stakes and all that, it's still done because it's a fake movie in a way that is also fun. So I was expecting a heavier movie than it was, and I actually had a good time with it. So I do recommend it.
Do we have, 2 years before we can cover it on RMR?
1 year. Next year.
1 year. Oh, this year's flown by. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, 2012. It's eligible next year, so you might hear more from it later. If I'm not mistaken, I think it even got Best Picture. But yes,
I think it was either Best Picture or Best Director.
Yeah, so and it is eligible for next year, and it could come up because it won 3 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Screenplay, and Best Editing, and it was nominated for a total of 7. But today's movie that we're doing is also very touted and has accolades as well. But before we get there, bonus question. You both have been roommates to Russell for 1 year. Tell the listeners one memorable, funny, or annoying strange story from Russell in the dorm days.
Probably what I remember the most was while he did introduce me to Fire Emblem, and I'll be forever grateful to that. What I remember the most was definitely the intense Smash Brother matches, playing against his Luigi and the death poke that would send me flying off screen over and over and over again. It was a good time.
Sometimes Byron wakes up in the middle of the night and hears the sound effect of that, like the
yeah.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Yeah, we would crank up and have these marathon matches where each of us had 20 stock lives and just go at it for a long time. So it was a blast.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It's a great way to spend an evening.
Yeah. Dustin, what about you?
I kind of need some help remembering why, but I was trying to convince you of something or whatever it was, but I was standing outside of your room and I recreated the Say Anything scene where Cusack holds the boombox over his
I
head.
have a picture of this.
Yeah, but can you remember why I was doing? I was just standing outside your room holding my laptop, which did not have great speakers.
No, it didn't.
I guess just
Yeah,
no, it had bad
I remember that it happened, but I don't remember why. That's also that's lost on me as well. So that's very funny.
And I've got that picture floating around on a hard drive too. I actually scrolled through it like last week, and it wasn't until you decided to ask this question I was like, oh yeah, why was I doing that? No idea.
Yep. Yeah. So that's funny. But today we're gonna do Dustin. What is our movie for today?
Today we are covering The Departed.
The Departed stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen, Ray Winstone, Vera Farmiga, and Alec Baldwin. It's released in 2006. It grosses $132.3 million. It places in the box office at 15th on the year. It comes in just behind Mission Impossible 3 and ahead of Borat. And the number one movie that year in 2006 was Pirates of the Caribbean, The Dead Man's Chest. IMDb gives The Departed an 8.5, and Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it a 90%, and the audience likes it even more and gives it a 94%. It's definitely an award winner. It wins Best Director for Martin Scorsese, Best Film Editing, Best Picture, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It also took away a Best Supporting Actor nomination for Mark Wahlberg, and it is also... it's a Golden Globe winner for Best Director in a Motion Picture, and it gets 5 other Golden Globe nominees as well. Byron, have you seen The Departed before? If so, what was your background with it? What's it like coming back to it now? And what's your take on it?
Yes, I seen this. I watch it probably once every couple years. First time I saw it was when it first came out in theaters. If I recall correctly, it was like the Carmike Wind song in Knoxville, and it's one of my favorite movies. Definitely top 10. Just one of those movies that I really enjoy watching over and over again. So I was happy to cover it.
Yeah, and so it's holding up for you then.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, Dustin, what about you? What's your history with The Departed?
I really like to embrace this role that I've fallen into on Retro Movie Roundtable as the guy who didn't see the big hit award-winning movies. I had never seen this before. So I was excited that when we selected it, because now, 15 years later, I get to learn what all the hype was about. This was my first chance looking at it. I will say I gave it the full 2.5 hours, no note-taking, no analysis, just watch it fully and enjoy, and that I did.
All right, and for me, I'm like Byron. I had seen this one. Well, I didn't see this one in the theaters. I saw it shortly after it came out to the rental stores, which was a thing at the time, and I missed. And I did not actually enjoy it the first time, and I let it sit there for quite a while. And Mary did not see it with me, and we watched it together years later, and I warmed up to it. She didn't like it. It's like a first time you watch it, you don't like it kind of thing, maybe. And this was probably my third time coming back to it, and so I watched it twice preparing for this. So I have warmed up to it over the years, and there's some jarring moments in the movie that catch you off guard. It is quite violent, and it's not necessarily a feel-good movie. And so when that happens, sometimes I don't necessarily put my arms around the movie right away. So however, there's so many good things going on about this movie, as we're about to get into, that I have grown to appreciate it beyond just feeling good.
I think I've already gotten my appreciation for it after watching it in preparation for today. And I will come back to it. I don't have any more hours left on my Amazon rental, but I will come back to it. I think this is something that should be watched. And I was, as I was watching it, I was just thinking, all the hype that seemed to follow it, and because I'm not necessarily like a Scorsese guy, but all the hype that kind of followed it, I was like, okay, earned, deserved.
Yeah, for sure. And Scorsese makes other kinds of movies other than just gangster movies, but yeah, this is definitely what you think of when you think of Scorsese. So, now, before we go any further, I gotta warn everybody, there will be spoilers that lie ahead, so Watch The Departed if you have not. And if you have, sit tight. We'll be back after these messages.
Welcome to the Flashback Flicks Retro Movie Podcast. I'm Ricky.
I'm Grayson.
And every week we review a movie from the past and reflect on things we missed, things we loved, and things we want to see again.
Yeah, because we believe any movie worth watching is worth watching again.
So if you like films, friendship, and a lot of callbacks,
I mean, just so many callbacks,
then subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever RSS feeds go for like-minded movie-loving individuals. Like you.
What happens when two modern film fans go back and rewatch all the old classic films from yesteryear to see if they hold up? You get the Classic Film Jerks podcast. Find the Classic Film Jerks podcast on all the major platforms.
All right, we're back. And if this is your final warning, if you have not seen The Departed, there will be spoilers that lie ahead. Dustin, for those who haven't seen The Departed since 2006, do you want to refresh people's memory?
Cue Dropkick Murphys, because you apparently have to use that damn song anytime you talk about Boston. Frank Costello runs an outfit and he's been successful for decades. We see him involved in the upbringing of Colin Sullivan, who eventually rises through the police force as a detective. During these initial shots, we're introduced to Billy Costigan, who is pursuing his own purpose after being raised split between wealth on one side on his family and a rough crime connections from the other. Both are infiltrators, men on the inside of the opposition. And our story follows as they attempt to sow trust, earn their spot, succeed in their deception, and ultimately survive as these two charged magnet organizations continue to draw each other closer. Enter police psychiatrist Madeline, whose interest opens a window to what is important outside of their respective groups. And we share the ride as these two reach the point of no return, with Sullivan's captain and Costigan's support Queenan getting tossed off a roof, Costello getting plugged by Sullivan for fear that the FBI is onto him, and the remaining leads learn that there are always way more players on the board than were ever revealed, leading to both of their demises. Cue Dropkick Murphys again, for some reason. I mean, what, did they just release that song or something?
It's just wicked good. It's a wicked good song. I suddenly have the urge for Dunkin' Donuts now. So now, Byron, this is one of the movies that you helped us select here. This is kind of an interesting movie about the convergence of two parallel lives, and it's a movie that deals with deception and information, and I guess you could say misinformation, and who has the knowledge when, and it builds a lot of suspense through the movie. Tell us what you thought about this kind of weaving of these two parallel tracks.
I really liked the way that the juxtaposition that Scorsese used to tell the story between these two opposing forces. In fact, one of my favorite scenes was I really liked how he kind of let it set itself up before even showing the title card for the movie. Because one thing that I read was that people really one noticeable thing was that you didn't even know what the name of the movie was until over like 5 minutes or 10 minutes into the film.
It's like 18 minutes. Yeah, it's like 18 minutes.
Yeah, it felt long. Yeah. At which point he goes into a panning shot first of Colin on the balcony of his apartment overlooking I forget the name of it. Was it Beacon Hill?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The state house there at Massachusetts.
Right. And then transition directly into a panning shot of Billy working out in his cell. And I just feel like just going back and forth, I really feel like that it really helped you just compare apples to apples, or apples to oranges, I guess. I don't know. I feel like there's so much lying in the movie. It's hard to tell. I mean, they're similar, and then they're opposing at the same time. So I just really enjoyed that part of the movie. Really,
it's interesting. They both kind of have a similar starting point. You know, they both are trying to rise above their backgrounds. You know, Matt Damon's character Colin is his father did not amount to much. He was just a baggage man at an airport, and Billy's
I think it's swapped, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say Colin's dad is just a janitor, and Billy's father is a airport baggage man who has connections to the life of crime, and neither of them, are happy with that, and they want more. And how they go about pursuing that is wildly different. And so you end up having one character who lives, puts his nose to the grindstone and goes to work for the good guys, but he ends up doing bad things. And the other guy goes to work for the good guys, but he's in cahoots and he's risen to the top because he's been propped up by bad people. And so he wants to do good things. He wants the prestige. He wants to be elevated up, but his road to get there is through the connections of crime. And it's kind of interesting how they're kind of just two sides of the same coin. Is that fair, Dustin?
It's fair. I don't know about Colin's upbringing, like his choice to do good. Did he ever have a choice? We meet Colin while he's sitting there having a sandwich at the countertop. When Costello walks in, am I getting that wrong? Did he ever really have a choice as to what he would do with his adult life, or was he kind of plucked young?
Well, we know he was in the Catholic Church, and that was a part of his life, and his family, was struggling to get by. And yeah, Costello lures him in. He knows who he is. He knows how to get to him, and sends groceries home with him, and clearly has money, and he can kind of just do whatever he wants to do. And it shows to Colin, like even as a young age, he's watching him kind of. He's not a nice guy. He knows that, but he can do whatever he wants to do, and that power and prestige that comes with that, I think, is what Colin latches onto. Like
maybe it's those words that a man makes his own way, and the church will tell you how to do it this way, but you don't have to. You can kind of do whatever you want. Look at me, I do what I want. And maybe there's some of that make yourself into what you want to make yourself into, not following these other rules. Then again, he's still within a world confined with rules. But going back to what you said, is it fair to say two sides of the same coin? Almost as quickly as a coin flips in the air, you get these shots back and forth between Billy's time that he's talking with with Martin Sheen and Wahlberg about going undercover, and you very quickly move between these two lives juxtaposed together, as Byron said, and it's awesome to see. I guess probably not just the first 18 minutes before the credit or the title card, but also like the next 10, 20 after that. It's very quick back and forth between the lives of these two men.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that they're both moles or rats for the opposite sides. You have Colin is a gangster who was put through the academy, and he's spying on the police. And then on this flip side, Billy was plucked before going into the state police force, and he's a rat for the gangster mob. And so they're both trying to attain information and give it back to their sides. And it's kind of a race for who can get the information, and it only intensifies and becomes more suspenseful as both sides are aware that they have a rat and they don't know who it is, and they're trying to figure it out. And it kind of sets off the clock of they're both trying to figure out what's going on and make everything final before they themselves are found, and obviously would be in great trouble. Billy obviously would be killed. And as well, Colin would be thrown in jail for a very long time as well. So, or killed by Costello for failing him. So the stakes are high here. Byron, as these things weave, as I mentioned, it's kind of fun to see them come together. Like, explain how that weaving and like almost hitting each other is as you watch this movie.
Well, I like the use of, or I guess the introduction of Madeline as kind of really the only common point between the two lives. She's kind of caught in, she's actually the only one really that's caught in between, without even really knowing it.
They're sharing the same spaces, they're crossing each other, they're searching for each other. They get desperately close to finding each other at multiple. So I was kind of just alluding to how does it feel as a viewer to watch them looking for each other and just not quite find each other?
I think it really helped convey the suspense in the film. Just, I think it required a lot of tact on the writing of the film, just kind of almost like a dance between the two, just getting just close enough to raise the stakes a little bit and then just miss, and you're kind of caught just waiting for the next time where they almost catch each other.
Yeah And I think you were starting to say like Madeline and Costello to some point are similar points.
That's true.
That they have different experiences of, and they have the shared world, but then again they're on parallel tracks, And it's interesting how they are looking for each other.
Whether they find each other through the movie, and which we do get close, like we get close to our two leads really meeting. It made me think about in the past with the mob existing, whether that's in Boston or we learn there's another outfit in Providence, getting the FBI involved with this state trooper task force, this kind of relationship between these two organizations has existed a long time. And both of these organizations have missions, and both of these leads have missions. So I was thinking about it after watching. I was thinking, what are the missions of Billy and Collie? So Billy's mission is to get enough information for Queenan and Dignam and the shared task force to finally bring down this major organized crime outfit. We know that what that mission should end with, and Billy's on the inside for the crime organization. But then that made me think, and I don't know, maybe you guys can help me with the answer. What is there an end goal to Collie's mission? Aside from just being a reliable, pick your rodent, mole, rat, I don't know, rabbit, squirrel, whatever rodent you want to pick. Being inside of the police organization just sort of seems like a be reliable, be on standby for your crime boss. Is there another mission or another point of completion there?
I don't think that there really was an end game from his point of view, and I kind of wonder if that's what the character was starting to realize towards the end of the film, is that this is what he was bred for, from a young age, is to just be a constant thorn in the department's side, feeding information to Costello, up until the point, I guess, where Costello just passes on for whatever means. I don't really see an end for him.
I think I think you're right. Costello doesn't have any higher ambitions other than to continue to know what's going on, which is a valuable piece in its own right to him, using him as a spy. But I think Colin has a personal goal. You see that he moves into an apartment, and that apartment overlooks the Golden Dome at Beacon Hill. This is the second time we've brought this up, and that's a sign of the high life, the prestige, the academia that he wants. He couldn't go to college, and he wanted to. You could see that in a conversation he had with one of his friends in the academy earlier. He feels like he can't get there from his station in life, and this is a means to an end for him. And he's obviously going about it unethically, but he wants out. And it kind of even becomes clear when he's dealing with Costello on the phone when Madeline's moved in. He kind of threatens her, and you see him kind of trying to gain a little bit of leverage and independence of saying, let me do this my own way. And, my career still matters. And, you start to see him take on his own identity. And he's ultimately the one that shoots Costello himself. And he shoots Costello's other rat, who saved his life by shooting Billy in the end, which we'll get to that crazy ending here soon. But he just wants he doesn't necessarily love the crime. It's just a way that he gets to be part of this prestigious life. And his attraction to Madeline, in part, is her. She's wearing a Harvard shirt later. She's a college-educated woman, and she has status as well. And so I think he just wants out of the low-class life, and he wants to be next to that gold dome, which is the high life.
We're shown that is something that he likes about his apartment, and it's something for the things that he could attain. I'm just wondering afterwards, I'm thinking to myself, how realistic is it to say that when you are plucked in your early teen years and you make your way through the academy, through detective, being handed command of such of these things, how realistic is it, I guess, for most people involved in organized crime, at least theatrical organized crime, how realistic is it that you will do a good job for a while and then get out? Maybe it's more realistic if you end up being surrounded by law enforcement and you can then have that trust of getting out. But if I were to look at it now, I'm like, I don't see any situation where saying, okay, I did my job for a long time, I want out. We know how that happens we know how that should have happened for Billy, but I don't know how that happens for Colin.
You're stuck. He's stuck. It's hard.
He's stuck.
Yeah.
He's stuck. But I also think that with what's presented to us as the audience, it doesn't take away from anything. I wasn't sitting there watching the movie saying dude, that's not realistic. That's not going to happen. I was kind of along for the thrill ride, which it was. and wasn't really fun to see how we culminate in that kind of a dark alley chase. How when all of these important actors in what's going on are so close in propinquity to one another. It's nerve-wracking. I kind of felt myself like kind of grabbing the edge of my seat, literally. Like we are so close to somebody looking up and seeing one of the other ones. I think the way that we are headed to the culmination of this film was really fun to be a part of.
Yeah. I mean, literally, one of them walks out of Dignam. Colin walks out of Dignam and Queenan's office, and then Billy walks in past him. At this point, they're not looking for each other. They don't know each other. They're just strangers in an office setting. And when you go back and watch that, that weaving is beginning even then, much less later by the time, Colin is being stalked by Billy, who's trying to watch what he's doing with Costello, and then he's chasing him down, trying to get an identity on who he is. I mean, it gets very direct and very exciting later on, but the weaving starts early and it doesn't let up, and right down to the very end where their deaths are moments apart.
And then you do weave in Madeline, and I didn't expect, nor did I need it, but that it was involved. I liked it. Madeline being involved in Billy's life, more so than Colin's. And her moving into Colin's apartment and their relationship becomes more integral. This is no longer just two strings twisting. This is now a braid. And one of these third strings is creating non-work problems or non-work obstacles to how both of these guys get to where they need to go. Unless I'm wrong, in which I would say she's actually much more of a help to Billy, to Leo's character. She's a big positive in his life.
I don't know that it's intentionally. Brian, what do you think about Madeline's character?
I really enjoyed the character. I think this was the first film that I had ever seen Vera Farmiga in, and I thought she did a great job. To speak to her ability to help Billy more than Colin, I feel like that was really tied to the fact that Billy was allowed to be more honest and upfront with her in their relationship than Colin is. Obviously to protect his position in the department. I feel like she was extremely intelligent. She was able to, kind of call bullcrap on some of Colin's comments, specifically when I think when Frank called in with the voice modulator or modifier to somebody who had a what's it called?
Larynx?
Larynx.
Laryngobotomy.
Okay.
Laryngobotomy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or something.
I feel like she was also a strong character, because she told Billy off too when he was just trying to scam her for pills, But she was also, kind and trying to help him and stuff like that. I think I was a little more interested in her interaction with Billy than with Colin, because I guess that seemed a little more one-sided and fictional.
Yeah, I think Colin likes the idea of her more than herself, and Billy makes a connection through to her because she gives him a place to be vulnerable where he clearly has none. It's not like Queenan and Dignam's not going to let him get vulnerable, I mean, and he can't tell anybody in his family this. He can't open up to anybody in the organization. So he's mentally breaking down, which is an interesting aspect of this movie. Colin is nervous, but he's not in constant fear of his life every minute that he's in there. And so Billy's literally a rickety mess. But I think it's also interesting that Madeline also not a nice person. She's lying. She's not necessarily aware of anything that Colin's doing that's wrong. She's just infatuated with this second man. And there was a therapist who looked at the script ahead of time for Vera Farmiga, because she did do, as a good actor would do, kind of shadowing somebody, and they said, this character does everything wrong, like whether it be from how the pills are done, for continuing to communicate with this person, to agreeing to get coffee. So she's breaking her rules left and right. And she even said, what would you do if Colin walked in right now on this? And she said, or your boyfriend, he doesn't know who it is, which just makes it more interesting. She says, I'd lie.
Yeah, it does.
And so, and she even had a line later. It's like, I thought I was the liar.
Yeah.
And so everybody's lying to everybody. And Costello, who you think can even be genuine because he's got nothing to hide, But he does. He hates rats. He despises them in his own organization, and yet he uses Colin as a rat. And furthermore, he is one himself to the FBI. That's what's keeping him protected, to the point of, why is he doing some of the things that he's doing? Just for the sheer fact that he likes to deal drugs. He likes to kill people. He's on a bit of a power trip, and he's protected himself by ratting out the rest of his organization. This
guy loves microprocessors. This guy's super about selling these microprocessors to the Chinese.
Yes, he is.
I sorry, I had to say that because I don't know if I've ever been if I've ever been made to laugh so much at how many people say the word microprocessor in this movie. It's said 100 times, and nobody knows what they are either. Yeah, the microchip they're using the computers, whatever it is. The whole kind of middle act where we are leading to the buying and selling of the microprocessors. I'm gonna say the movie isn't a comedy, but it is funny, and so there are things like that are unintentionally funny. I think, which are the just how many times they say microprocessor and for what sum of money? $1 million.
I feel like we have a little bit of the Dr. Evil aspect where he holds the girl hostage for $1 million, and they're like, "Oh, okay, sure." The parts outside of what the organized crime,
or the parts outside of what the crime organization is doing, selling drugs and microprocessors. That's not what this movie is about. This movie is about the interaction of these two organizations. There's not some big sting. They're trying to catch him on the big one. It's alluded to, and even with that particular scene with the Chinese, that's the movie isn't about that culmination, because in fact it doesn't culminate in anything. The side of law enforcement was too rushed, and they were not able to prepare for it, and then they get away in a boat. So there's that the crunchiness, the mechanics of how the crime organization works isn't featured, and that isn't necessary. I'm glad it wasn't. It's about these relationships between all of these people, and whether it's a lead or a supporting actor, they're all great.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of $1 million, you like some stats and some numbers?
This guy does.
Yeah. All right, Byron. Over under. How many F words do you believe are used in this movie?
50.
Okay, Dustin. Over under. Or sorry. Without going over. Price is Right rules here. How many F words?
72.
You're going to get this one because it's 238 F-bombs.
Oh, wow.
So you're both way under. We'll do this one again. How many people die in this one? Body count in this one. Byron, do you want to go first on this one?
I think I might have accidentally seen this one.
Okay.
You can
go ahead.
That's the way the game works.
Okay.
I'm going to say how many people die?
Yeah.
24.
Okay.
So,
and Byron?
I'm going to say 22.
Byron did his homework ahead of time. It is 22 exactly. So 22 is too
okay.
high for blackjack, but not for this game. So it is interesting. And I think one of the other things that we should mention is that Costello's character is actually kind of based on a real-life South Boston gangster named James Whitey Bulger. And he's kind of a legend in South Boston. Nothing happened in that neighborhood without really him knowing about it. Now, Costello's not literally telling the Whitey Bulger story, but it is definitely influenced by that gangster world of his Irish gang. And it's an interesting story in its own right. So if you like gangsters, which you might if you're watching this movie, you should probably check out Whitey Bulger. He's a pretty audastic kind of dude. He's the rules don't apply to him kind of guy as well. So I don't know if you guys picked up on any of that at all.
What I'll say about Whitey Bulger is after he was killed in prison, I know that American media jumped on it, whether in the form of docuseries or documentary, or just more very closely related things to Bulger's life in that area in the Northeast. But that's never been my favorite thing. I much prefer something like this, where inspiration can be drawn, as opposed to the life story or closest to the true story of an actual gangster. This is much more creative and much more fun for me than true crime stuff. People will say, "Oh, you in a true crime?" And my answer has always been a flat no, not really. You are?
Yeah. Give it to me interesting, not real. That's fine. Yeah, and Bulger was an FBI informant himself, and so that there are a number of influences drawn from him. But I mean, Jack Nicholson brought a lot to the role himself. Byron, transitioning, talking about the acting, what points would you like to call out? Like, what are the things that the actors did that stood out to you?
The scene where, first off, I heard that he made up a lot of the lines. He ad-libbed a lot of it, of the scenes in the movie. It was just kind of Jack just doing him, in the place of his character. And some of the more memorable scenes were things that he had proposed. For example, the porn theater scene where apparently it was Jack Nicholson's idea to wear the dildo in front of Matt Damon, and
it's a really funny scene when that happens. I applaud that choice.
I didn't see that coming. It's right before a very tense and exciting moment too. So it is one of those tones of just like, especially on the third watch, you're just kind of like, huh, that's not in the tone of the movie here.
But it was in the tone of Jack Nicholson that day, and like that he had thought about doing it, and like kind of just chuckled to himself when thinking about doing it again. I could just kind of see him smiling and laughing, trying to keep it under wraps, and then doing it. I actually hadn't thought about that since watching the movie a couple days ago until you just said it, and it's cracking me up right now. Yeah.
But my favorite scene was the part where he was talking. Apparently, when he was talking to Leo in the bar, and they're discussing who the rat might be, and then you hear the gun fall, and then he bends over and Jack picks up his gun and kind of looks at it, and then he just points it directly at Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah. Apparently that whole scene was also just improvised. And when I first saw that, I remember it because my heart jumped in my chest. I thought that was Billy's gun. Like he was getting ready to pull on on Frank, and Frank just picks it up like, oh, what's this? But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
When they found out they had Jack Nicholson on the cast, they made the part bigger for him. And he has a very big presence in the movie. To your point, as an actor, he just wanted to make him a wild card. Like, you don't know what this guy's going to do. So that the fact that when he's an FBI informant, it somehow seems believable because this man does anything, everything, and does, and then doesn't necessarily have a code that he sticks to other than he's out for himself.
Yeah, like for me, when I'm eating breakfast or whenever, like I grew up in the South, and so I learned like table etiquette, no elbows on the table, and no hands either, whether or not they're connected to someone or you're taking the ring off or pulling a bloody hand out of a plastic bag. You don't know what he's going to do. That was I think the first moment in the movie where I was like, whoa, this is unpredictable. When he's I don't know what he's having for breakfast. It looked like some type of shellfish, which is decadent. Shellfish for breakfast. And then you pull out a hand. And there's a little comedy after that, too. Like, Mr. French walks over and says, like, they're commenting about the grisly act that they had done. Like, then they're laughing about it. I thought it was a nice touch that you asked the guy which hand he masturbated with. And this is just a polite breakfast conversation with Billy sitting at the other side of the table.
She felt funny after he shoots somebody in the back of the head. So.
I wondered if the whole tone of the movie would have more of that in it, because that's very early. She felt funny very early.
Yeah. So, but Nicholson, what would you think? Because initially, Scorsese pursued Al Pacino for this role. He does later go on to work with him in The Irishman. What do you think about Pacino in this role, Byron?
Honestly, I can't imagine him doing an Irish accent.
That's a good point.
At least not like Jack Nicholson, so I couldn't.
I don't think Jack really gives you Boston. I feel like Jack just showed up and was Jack to some degree. I feel like Damon and Wahlberg get the golden star for their Boston accents, and Baldwin's not bad, but I feel like Nicholson's doing his own thing.
Yeah, maybe.
When the needle moves towards Boston with Nicholson, I did cringe a bit, because clearly when you have somebody at the caliber of Nicholson, you expect everything to be on point and great. So I would have preferred if it was closer to Nicholson than it was closer to Boston. I think he had one bad like hard R or swallowed R that like I just had to really quickly move past in my mind. Like, no, you're still watching watching an expert do his work. Don't linger on that.
Yeah. Now, another fun alternative casting. If you've seen Goodfellas, Ray Liotta is he's the main character, big role in this movie that Scorsese works on. He actually came back to Liotta, hoping to put him in the role of Dignam, who would later go on to be Mark Wahlberg, who had a lot of other structuring conflicts with his schedule, and they talked him into doing it, and he did it. And he had a bad relationship with Scorsese because he was only supposed to be there for like 4 weeks, but it took months to do, and it caused him some difficulty and stuff like that. But Ray Liotta, what do you think about Ray Liotta in the role of Dignam?
I could have seen that. I would have liked to have seen that. Although I did like Mark Wahlberg's role. I thought he did a good job with that. But I could see Ray Liotta doing the same thing, to be honest.
Yeah. I could even see Liotta, the age might not be quite right, but I could also see him going towards the softer side of taking Martin Sheen's role. But he wasn't available, so it just was a scheduling conflict. It wasn't a role issue. So Dennis Leary also was looked at, and Ethan Hawke were considered for Dignam as well. So Mark Wahlberg, to me, nailed that one, though.
Yeah.
See, I was going to say, if I had to place Liotta in this movie, I would probably do it on the mob side, not on the law enforcement.
Oh, like maybe Ray Winstone's character?
Perhaps, or one of the other ones. But I will say...
Yeah.
Winstone as Mr. French I actually really like, but maybe as Delahunt. But I liked Wahlberg as Dignam. I also liked the amount of screen time, which was, if you had to smush it all together, Wahlberg's screen time was less than 10 minutes probably, but every one of those 20-second to minute-long strings of curses and insults and firing back at somebody else was gold. And I think that's about as much of Mark Wahlberg as I need ever in anything. I like him in that amount, and then move on to something else.
So you don't want a full album of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, then?
No, give me more Funky Bunch. And I've been saying this for a while, guys. Give me more Funky Bunch. In fact, just give it to me, Dusty Dust and the Funky Bunch. Let me take over. Mark, you're way too focused on fitness. You wake up at 4 a.m. and you go pray, and then you go work out and you pray again. You keep doing that. Let me do the Funky Bunch stuff. Anyway, let me get off my pedestal.
Any other acting comments that you wanted to bring up, Byron?
I liked Martin Sheen's role. I didn't appreciate him the first time I saw it. I think I was just kind of, I think a lot of people overshadowed his character. But just the roles with him and Leo towards the middle and end of the film, where he welcomed into his home and stuff like that. I think he really did a good job of being kind of a father figure to Billy.
He's like the only nice guy in this movie.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Actually, who's the biggest jerk in this movie? It's actually a pretty tough question. Because Madeline, as we said, not a nice person. I mean, Colin, not a nice guy. Costello, super, he's evil. He's beyond a jerk. He's evil. Mm-hmm. Alec Baldwin, his character, not nice. Dignam. I mean, jerk, so in a movie full of jerks, who gets the big jerk award?
I think Dignam was the most entertaining jerk.
He was a funny jerk. Yeah.
I don't know. I think I would also go with Dignam, but what we do learn early, before title card, I believe, is Dignam says to Billy, if you want to help the Commonwealth, this is how you do it. We need you, pal. There is, I've mentioned this before, a difference between tough love and just being tough. And this is mostly just being tough. But you get a little bit of that out of Wahlberg then, and obviously in the last minute of the movie, of what are his values, what does he live? And clearly he cares about the identities and the secrecy of his team, a staff sergeant, of the people that trust him and he needs to place trust in. So outward jerk, yeah, but there's also the caring about what his duty is that drew me to his character and to Queenan's character as well. The secrecy is important. The jerk mantra. What does Queenan say? Staff sergeant has his own personality. We all got to deal with it. Well, why is this captain, or why is this particular guy saying we got to deal with it? Well, clearly because he's the best, or it's because he's great at what he does. Mm-hmm. And, that was a real pleasure to kind of see how that wraps up towards the end, or at the very end of the.
Too bad Dignam doesn't show up on time.
Yeah.
Being on time, not his strong suit.
Being on time matters again in the in the movie with Billy's character not showing up on time, and
Yeah,
the little
the
detail.
344.
Yeah, and it was Della Hunt, I believe, who says, I gave you the wrong address and you were still there. Tell me why I didn't tell the other guys." There was, as I said earlier, I was kind of gripping my seat. There were moments of this movie that I was just like, "Oh, yes, this is like I'm getting even more involved." Sometimes it was something like Mr. French putting his snub nose underneath his chin right after he gets shot and crashes the car. Sometimes it is seeing the elevator door open and hearing that gunshot, which I
Ugh.
do my hardest to try not to expect what's coming. It's a skill that you have to hone. Try not to figure things out. Try not to expect the unexpected. Let the movie give it, and it does so many times.
Yeah, and it's don't. By the way, gotta watch out for those X's in there. Martin Scorsese likes to put X's in the scenes when people are about to bite the dust. So it is a little bit of a thing that he had picked up from some old gangster movies himself, and it's a tip of the hat to that as well here. So yeah. So let's talk about Martin Scorsese. He's an amazing director, and we've got William Monahan's impressive script. Martin Scorsese picks it up, and it made him want to take the job right away. And it's interesting. This movie is actually kind of a remake. There's a Chinese movie called Infernal Affairs, and it's got a lot of similarities to this. Now, Scorsese didn't know about this apparently until after signing up to do the movie. He fell in love with Monahan's screenplay, and it was about the Boston way of life, and he had spread false information through it. There's that Whitey Bulger parallel, and it all was based on these things that were very, very, very anchored to Boston. It seems so out there that it couldn't be real, Scorsese said, but it was real. And that's what made him connect with it, because he himself had grown up in a world where he had seen some of this. And he's obviously known for these gangster movies. Byron, what do you think about Scorsese as a director right here within The Departed?
I actually liked this style of movie more than his gangster films or his more traditional ones. I mean, I liked Goodfellas, and his other movies like that. But I guess I liked seeing his view from the police side equally as from the criminal side in this film, while still also interjecting the criminal aspect in putting a rat in the police department. But I think I'd read somewhere that this was one of the more unpleasant films that he admitted to making, especially in post-production, which is kind of disappointing to hear. I would have liked to have heard that he enjoyed this as much as I did, but it didn't seem to be the case. But I really liked it.
It's got a heavy finish. I said we should talk about that, but I mean, what about that finish? I mean, honestly, when I said I didn't like this the first time, seeing Billy get shot at the end didn't sit well with me, and I left going there like, man, you do all that cool stuff and then you wrap it up like that. I know the message is clearly crime destroys everybody's life it comes into contact with, whether you're a good person like Queenan, whether you're a person like Madeline, and it destroys Billy and it destroys Colin. And I get that that's the message, but is that the message I want? So I don't know. I found myself saying that. Like, Dustin, you just saw it for a first time. Your first run was warmer than mine. How did that ending sit for you?
I think maybe it's unfair because since that time I'd seen other movies where things wrap up in that way, or wrap up in a way that didn't sit well with me. The first one was a bad viewing when I was living in Knoxville. I don't think we were living together at the time, but I went and saw 3:10 to Yuma, and I didn't like how that movie wrapped up, and it kind of ruined my night. I've mentioned briefly before peak end phenomenon, the idea that the peak of something and then the end of something both hold kind of equal sway in your mind. And the end of 3:10 to Yuma made me not like that movie. Come back to it since then and have enjoyed it for what it is. The Hateful Eight has an ending that sometimes is when you look at it, some people might not be satisfied. And so I have been kind of battle hardened against movies that end this way. And what I will say, I feel lucky when people tell you a movie's good and you're in the seat of never having seen it before and you get to just fully drink it all in. I think I was satisfied with how it wraps up. I did find myself, even with Billy's role as an undercover cop, just Billy's character, I wanted his arc to finish stronger, or to you want to root for someone, and I found myself rooting for Billy. And so seeing his end at the hands of a character who I can't even remember the name of, but at the end of that, it does, the message that you said, Russell, is best, is that, like, yes, crime ruins, or crime destroys, but I think maybe that's something that is a positive to come out of this movie. It's not something that I felt like left a bad taste in my mouth. I think a movie that was as heavy as this one was, and how stressful some of the intertwining things were, ending like that kind of was like a gasp, almost like a sigh of, not of relief, but like a sigh of like, ooh, so that's how it has to happen. And I do have something else to say about the, maybe last 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the movie, but I'm actually going to wait until a little later to discuss that.
Ooh, good tease. So I think, Byron, I think you nailed something. Like, I actually am not in love with Scorsese's gangster work. I don't love watching Goodfellas. It's a well-made movie, but I don't like watching the destruction of a person throughout the movie, no matter how fascinating their life might be. Like, Scarface is like, this is somebody who lives an extraordinary life, and it's very fascinating and captivating for a lot of people to watch somebody like Costello, who you would never act that way, but what if you did? And obviously it leads to their destruction, and that's a good message to convey. But I think that it's just one of those things of, I kind of like good to triumph, and it's one of those things where it's such an injustice that, for that it didn't sit well with me the first time. Now, like I said, I came back to it and I said, whoa, I overlooked a lot of stuff. All the intricate plot work, all the number of times that they almost hit each other, the fact that it's a rat hiring a rat to go in and the other rat's trying to catch him, and everybody's spying on everybody. I love it. And I was too hard on it the first time. So it is interesting. It's also extremely violent. We haven't talked about that. Scorsese will hit you over the head with violence. And you've seen this in Mean Streets. You've seen this in Goodfellas. Byron, it's a pretty in-your-face violent movie.
Very much so. I feel like up until the ending, though, it was kind of tame compared to some of his other movies.
Other movies. Yeah, I was going to say there's no Joe Pesci. Okay, yes.
Yeah. Compared to his other movies, it was kind of tame. And then, from the moment where the primary characters start dying, it just catches up. They saved a lot of the blood for the final 15 minutes of it.
Severed hands at breakfast. I mean, point blank shot. There's clips of murder scenes that are very gruesome and in your face. And honestly, one of the ones that stuck for me from the first time was the when DiCaprio's basically getting arrested the first time in the movie, trying to sell a convincing scene that he is a mischief maker. He gets in a fight in a convenience store, and he takes like a coat rack and he's like slamming, these Italian gangsters' faces.
The two guys from Providence, yeah.
I was like, ooh, that's a lot.
Soundtrack really helps with that scene. That one is the Human Beings with Nobody But Me. I think that the physical bludgeoning type violence in this movie was throughout. Like, it was present throughout, and well done to me. I'm not talking about like stage blocking and theater fighting. I'm just saying, like, when French punches a guy, he punches him. When you get pistol whipped and teeth fly out, you feel it, you hear it. There's a crunch to it. It happens quite a bit. Fist fights between Alec Baldwin and who did he take? He takes that one guy down.
The cameraman.
Yeah, and there's a lot of infighting between characters. I think there's a moment under the bridge with Queenan and Billy, and
Billy hits somebody over the head with a picture of Jesus.
That was awesome, and that's the beginning of that scene. Like, that scene begins with there's a head, and then there's a picture coming down. Dignam and Billy get into it. I just physical fighting like that doesn't end with like a knockout is, I think, shown to be like a way of life, a way of how things get solved.
You are right about that for Scorsese. He's said that. Like, he's like, it's not violence for the sake of violence, so it's not Tarantino. It's not, but to him, it's just like he doesn't glorify it. He says, but it is absolutely the world that these people live in.
Yeah, and there's no with those fist fighting things. There's no like suffering there. The people tend to get up and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I deserve that, or that's kind of how things go. There are other less violent instances of psychological suffering in other films, whether or not there's a gun involved or a knife or torture. That like there's none of that in this movie. The violence happens and it's either prolonged fist fight or it's a gunshot, and I think that's something that how do I put this, that I enjoy. I don't know if that's the best way of putting it. The best way of putting it is that like you don't need the suffering to go along with the violence, which makes me think like when you describe a movie as violent, you might think of pain or agony. And I don't know if there's a lot of, in terms of the violence in this, pain or agony. You get a lot of headshots and a lot of drop. This person drops dead.
I don't know. I'll the another thing that I never forgot was Billy's arm was in a cast. And Mr. French, Ray Winstone's character, takes his arm and just slams it down on a pool table, and then Costello comes with a big boot and slams it on him. He's like, "Are you a cop?" And like he's like, "I'm not a cop."
I almost found that more. Is this saying more about me? I almost found that like more funny or humorous. Maybe it's because the boot was like kind of floppy in his hand. I thought for a second, like, how did they get through that in one take without like laughing about it?
Wow.
I'm not
Byron, do not hand Dustin your shoe, by the way.
There is ongoing narrative about me and violence with this podcast, so maybe I need to back off about this. But yeah, okay, I'm not going to say that like there was no agony, but there's times with fear and or the uncertainty of surviving or even getting through with your well-being, and then there's also times when like that's the focus of the scene, and then there's the time where it's like the character then has a moment to bear their true self. Like we have the moment in the elevator as they're going down. Colin is in cuffs and he just says to Billy, "Just kill me, just kill me." And like that kind of psychological, like this is the end, is for me, like that's the type of suffering that can sometimes turn me off. But it was important at that time of the movie to say, like, all right, have you reached the end? It's a great chance for these actors to show, with great writing, like, what is this character feeling? How deep is what is running through their minds? Things that this podcast helps me with so much is just revisiting these like micro moments and like, oh, that's just so well done.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I think is it fair to say, and I think I might be able to say this with both of you, like when you guess the number of F-bombs in the movie, it was like a third of what there was. I'm wondering, did in the course of a 2.5 hour movie that you become sucked into this world so effectively, which is praise to Scorsese, that when you start to slow down and go through it all, it's just like, oh yeah, there's a lot of violence in this movie. So I found it interesting. They're both kind of coming through as like, it's largely at the end, or like, I like it. It was funny. And I'm like, I'm sitting there going like, wow, Scorsese got you. He got you on the hook and he pulled you in. It is one of those things where when you step back and you go, wow, this was a tough movie. You're right though, Byron. I do think Goodfellas is meaner, is a better way of putting it. Yeah. Scorsese, though, did say that this was a highly unpleasant experience in making the movie, much like what Byron was saying. He called it moral ground zero. All the characters are killed in the end, basically everyone anyway, and no one has anywhere to go after that. I hardly did any press for the film. I was tired of it. It was maddening, and I just felt like the picture... he said, I like it, but the process of making it, particularly in post-production, was just most unpleasant for him. And... you do have to wonder, this is like his 5th gangster movie, to the point of just like, yeah, why don't you make more movies like Hugo then?
I think I share his sentiment, which was I tend to also get uncomfortable, even with my previous career. I get uncomfortable when I'm around too many cops, or I'm around too many uniformed officers. Like I think I would rather be in the room filled with the guys getting things done the hard way on the streets than the people wearing uniforms. How did Colin put it? Like, oh, you like showing up every day dressed like you're going to go invade Poland?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there were a lot of gangsters as well as policemen giving influence to this movie. DiCaprio talked to people of Irish gang connections. He gained a lot of muscle weight for the role, and as he adapted his performance, much like I mentioned earlier with Vera Farmiga. There's cops and gangsters involved with making this movie. And Scorsese said when making gangster movies, as he's done many times before, he certainly knows them. He knows their world. It was a structure that he grew up in New York City, and he was an unhealthy kid who had asthma, and he wasn't pulled into this as much. So like he ended up going to the theater and being more of a creative kid more so. But it was absolutely a world that he grew up in an Italian community in New York City, and these gangster movies kind of speak to him in a way. And it's interesting to your point, Dustin. He was saying that having the police around on stage was more unnerving than it was the gangsters. So Scorsese shares your opinion on that completely. So
well, and this is also just part of me as Dustin the person, not Dustin the podcast host. Who just had, when it comes to social hierarchy of who we hold in esteem over others, people in uniform versus people that aren't, haves versus have-nots. This is things that put you at a disadvantage in just a simple conversation, and one of those things is a uniform, and another thing is a firearm. So these are situations where that's where I mean, like I shared exactly what you just said about Scorsese with the officers on stage. Like, yeah, I'm not super comfortable. I don't look around every room thinking, am I outnumbered by different types of people? But when I'm outnumbered by people in uniform, I usually am looking for the exit.
Wow, you're getting along with Martin Scorsese pretty well then on this one. So yeah,
Marty Mark and the Funky Bunch featuring Dusty Dustin, his second Funky Bunch. We should work on this.
Yeah, and I was watching an interview with Scorsese. He was saying a lot of what I was talking about, this was a world he grew up in, but he specifically spoke about his father took him to a double feature in 1931 of The Public Enemy and Little Caesar, and other movies like White Heat come out, and James Cagney playing this gangster role. Warner Brothers, in particular, he said, was allowing a lot of rougher content to come out, and this just connected with him as a filmmaker, and it absolutely comes throughout his filmmaking. Critics have gone back and said those early films, while rough, are the certain way. By the time you get up to Scorsese's work in the 70s and 80s, or 90s and 2000s, is he brings a lot of legitimacy and reality to it. His world that he paints in his gangster movies are very, very, very realistic. And again, he kind of had a foot into that world where he could see into that world, and he's bringing it to you as a filmmaker. And that's why he's so applauded for these things. So I still enjoy his other kinds of movies, as we've talked about. Like I like The Aviator, I like Hugo, I like Shutter Island, and so I feel like he's just a good filmmaker. What do you think about taking this Chinese story and adapting it to Boston? And again, there's precedent through the Whitey Bulger culture there that this all fit Boston. This story fit like a glove. Byron, what do you think about this Boston cultural setting and this climate that we have here?
I find films set in Boston interesting. Just the community, I guess, of that area. It's just such a unique setting, I find, compared to some other places of the country. I'm trying to think of some other movies that were set in.
It's an interesting juxtaposition because you have Cambridge, where you have MIT and Harvard, but then also the South Boston is notoriously very rough. And as you pointed out, it has this culture that we don't often see in movies. We see Los Angeles, we see New York depicted a lot, but I like being imported into this world. I think The Town with Ben Affleck is another one, far less realistic than this one, or even Good Will Hunting. I like visiting this world. I don't want to live in it. Or The Fighter, that's another good one with Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg. So
yeah, I'm trying to think of the one with Casey Affleck where they were investigating a child that was
Gone Baby Gone.
Abducted. Yes, that.
Which sounds like like a cheerful song,
yeah.
And that movie is anything but. So
yeah, it was a dark one.
Yeah. In fact, I'm thinking of Gone, Gone, Gone. I was thinking there's a Robert Plant, Alison Krauss crossover song, but Gone Baby Gone sure sounds like that.
And Mystic River, I think that was in the same area, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, Boston setting, what do you think about it?
I was about to pipe in about the Boston setting. I have never been, but based on the movies and or TV shows that use it as a setting, you almost feel as if you know it, even if you've never been. I only know the theatrical Boston, but the theatrical Boston seems to be a place where, what do we have? The quote early in this movie, which is, you become a cop or you become a criminal. Obviously, that's not the case in real life. But the way that this is framed, that the film of Boston is framed, is like that's kind of what you do. You find a way to make a little extra scratch by selling some coke. Well, apparently you do, yeah, unless you're a cop.
I was going to say, Mark Wahlberg did say if you grow up in South Boston, you're going to become a construction worker, a cop, or a criminal.
And you find the way that Colin talks to Madeline. Wait, Madeline? Do I have that name right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. He's asking about this job as a psychiatrist, and you're like, the non-law enforcement professionals of this world have no play. That it's like that world doesn't exist. An architect doesn't exist in Boston because you're not a cop or a criminal. Well, I'm not going to go that far, but I will say there's no the psychiatrist is like, oh, you went to school and you became this. Going to school and becoming some other type of professional is not touched upon unless you're an attorney, in which case you're an attorney for the district, the DA or prosecutor, or you're a mob lawyer. Makes me think of a great short story arc from 30 Rock, the show with Tina Fey and Alec Baldwin, where you've got one of the characters who has a dream of becoming a lawyer. His Boston mom doesn't want him to become a lawyer because all of the family's lawyers are mob lawyers. Like going to school to get your law degree means you're going to end up working for the mob. So I find the Boston setting creates this kind of dichotomy that I don't have to work that hard to separate like the reality from the film version. It's just kind of a fun world to live in. You're either on the criminal side or the cop side. We don't need to worry about the veterinarians, or we don't need to worry about the actuaries or the
I don't think
insurance
actuaries
adjusters.
actuaries don't make good movies.
No, they don't. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm being unfair to any of our actuary listeners, but yeah, the dichotomy of like this, you're either on this side or the other, and then you get a movie like this where you have the sides and you have the rats on both sides. Gave a fresh take on what I'm not going to say that it's like tried or tired or rote, but like this is kind of what you expect Boston to be in the movies that portray it. And this one gives you, the double agents and the secrecy and the deception with both organizations. I've found it enjoyable.
And in addition to the State House of Massachusetts, which we called out, I definitely want to call out, I like to point out architecture movies. Paul Rudolph's Government Service Center, which is a 1962 brutalist building. It's an era of building that's sometimes unloved, but this building's pretty cool. This is the concrete building that you see being shot where Queenum, Dignam, Alec Baldwin's character, as well as Matt Damon's character, are all working. Those really cool stairs that kind of swoop down from this heroic concrete structure with this corduroy concrete on it. It's so cool. And again, that's very Boston. However, Scorsese couldn't, he spent $90 million on just the cast. And so he wanted to film this in Boston, but they actually only shot in 3 weeks in Boston in summer. And most of the filming was done in New York as well. Or not most of it, but a large part of it was done in New York as well. So South Boston doesn't necessarily, you're not dripping with landmarks such as the Beacon Hill kind of moment, the Boston Public Library, etc. They're not out there to sightsee, but they're also not really immersing you in it. And I'm disappointed in that, in a way that says, you do have a large budget. You're Scorsese, you can do whatever you want to do. I'm sad that, government taxes and all that stuff worked out the way that this couldn't be entirely filmed in Boston. So.
Well, I'm certain there are the things about Boston, you having been there, or the things about what like its community and physical structures that are important. But I'm not trying to take away from that at all. But being as a guy that's not familiar with the Northeast that much, I don't think there was any aspect of this that made me ever think
you're in New York.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially with a lot of the interior stuff, like with like the bars, or the bar setting or the back room setting, or the maintenance type room where somebody's getting beaten up, or an apartment, whether that's on the ground floor, and someone's getting their head smashed in with a picture of Jesus, or whatever it is. I don't feel as if that I was out of place from the film.
I'll tell you what was too New York. Jack Nicholson refused to wear a Boston Red Sox hat
That's right.
during this movie and wore a
Yeah.
Yankees hat instead. And I was just thinking, is this guy the ultimate bandwagon fan? But because I know he's an infamous Lakers fan, which doesn't make me like him, to be honest with you. I hate the Lakers, but his hatred of Boston as a Laker fan is just so real. He wore a Yankees hat to stick it to him. So, boo, Jack Nicholson.
He would not wear the Red Sox hat. Good for him. I always appreciate when people take that seriously. And I also appreciate these kids out there, these whippersnappers out there that are just wearing sports attire because the fit looks good. Hey, the fit does look good. But there's no way you'll ever catch me, no matter how much yellow or purple accent that I want with an outfit I'm wearing. Never catch me in Lakers gear, I'll tell you that.
Well, you won't catch me in Lakers gear unless you're paying me millions of dollars to be in a movie. In which case, Martin Scorsese could tell me, you need to wear the Lakers jersey. And I'd be like, how much are you paying me? All right. But you're going to have to digitally superimpose it onto my body like you like removed Henry Cavill's mustache in Justice League. So
Yeah, would that be better? Yeah, we can do that.
yeah, because if I actually put it on me, it will burn. It will burn.
Oh, I need to bring this up. While we were attending University of Tennessee, there was a moment, if you remember, I was involved with the marching band, and I was in leadership there.
Yeah.
There was a moment where I wore a gray t-shirt and some, we'll say, kind of maroon, like burgundy style basketball shorts. And the director of bands walked up to me and said, Dustin, go talk to Judy. We're going to take you to Dick's Sporting Goods and we're going to buy you some orange and white. If anybody sees you wearing Alabama colors, then you're done. And at that point, I went and got, $200 worth of thank you, University of Tennessee Athletics Department for helping me with that. But yeah, I'm not going to be wearing the sports logo or the colors of a team that I despise.
Yeah, yeah.
I loved the hairstyle choice for Dignam. I thought it was so weird. But at the same time, it made him look juvenile, which is how he acted. And
Yeah.
it just tied into the whole mystique, I guess, of him just being a complete jerk. And I love it.
Yeah, that did make him more of a jerk face cop for sure. Yeah. I thought Madeline was overdressed. Like she's elevated. They pointed out that she's not the highest paid person in her position and that she's a government worker, and she's sharply dressed. And I think that that's done on purpose, actually, to make it look like, again, education equals status in this movie. And just as much as Matt Damon's looking at Beacon Hill, as much as Colin's character yearns for that world, she is a piece of that world that he wants to be part of. And I think actually overdressing her was a deliberate choice to make her seem classier, even though she's not that classy of a lady.
She didn't know how to attack that dessert they brought out. That dessert, it was too tall. Like, 8 inches long? That's never been too big from what I heard. But I did like that kind of when that dessert's brought out and they both kind of don't know how to deal with the swankiness of this place. But I also thought to myself, like in that conversation at dinner, I think she's her honesty about lying, and then just her character as far as being in a relationship or being interested in a partner. But she says something that it sounded like a real thing you would hear at a date. I think she said, "What, you didn't like your lobster?" Like it was like a real question asked, and it's once again a thing about the relationships in this film that seemed very real. My first episode ever on this podcast was another Matt Damon flick, The Adjustment Bureau, and we talked about how all of the banter and the talk between Emily Blunt and Matt Damon seemed very real. And I will say, at least early on in the relationship with Colin and Madeline, they were talking. It felt realistic.
It did, yeah. Give me a card. Nah, I don't need it. I'm a detective.
I'm a detective. I'll find you.
No, I'm just kidding. I need the card.
But It did bother me that he was holding the elevator for all those, like all those people couldn't get to their floor. It was funny, and then like the third time it tried to close, I put myself, like I transported myself into that elevator, and I got it. Just close the deal, get the number. I'm late for a meeting. Let's go.
But it shows you that he's a charming liar, which is, it carries beyond what he does there. So, now, I think one of the bigger bold moves that they made with some of the wardrobe, because most of it's pretty standard affair, Costello, Byron. What do you think about Costello? He's got some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. And I actually saw somewhere that, and I don't know, I guess they had a stylist or something look at the film, and they felt that Costello's wardrobe heavily leaned towards someone that was homosexual.
Well, he does have like a lavender jacket at one point. He has a leopard tie with like a purple shirt on. He's got like this weird striped white and purple kind of jacket that I sit there and I go like, man, I don't even know if you can sell that jacket in Miami, much less Boston. Like, I don't, like, who's buying this stuff? No, it's a good point. Yeah, and even when he wears just like a trench coat to the Chinese microchip deal, he's wearing a weird like fisherman's boat hat.
Microprocesses.
Yeah, microprocesses.
It's a bucket hat. It's a dumb hat. He looks dumb in it, but everything else that he wears, I love. But I hate that bucket hat. Might as well have a Lakers logo on it.
But in a way, that's unpredictable like him. We talked about Nicholson bringing this character into the realm of unpredictability. So I don't know. It's a good point, Byron. Like, it's not what you'd expect. I mean, if you look at like The Godfather, you know, when you're the head of a mob gang, you're well dressed. And if I was the head of a crime world, I would have the nicest Tom Ford and Armani suits to select from. So, he's definitely not going with that route.
I think if I were a mafia boss, I would go the route of the scene after he's wearing the leopard print tie, the next morning where he takes the hand out of the plastic bag over breakfast. He's wearing either a leopard print or a jaguar print robe. And I think that's probably my
That's
goal
your mob
in
boss?
life, is to eventually, with whatever situation I'm in, if I'm in a position where I'm wearing a robe and nobody's questioning me, then I've made it.
I think I'd probably end up going the same route as you, some kind of Tom Ford Armani suit kind of ensemble.
Nice. Yeah. Pinstripes?
Sure.
Yeah. It's part of being a gangster.
Classy, yeah.
Yeah. Byron, any kind of soundtrack moments that stuck out for you?
Was there anything besides Dropkick Murphy?
There were.
There were other things, yes, but yeah. So Dropkick Murphys definitely stuck out for you, and I will admit it stuck out a lot for me. It was more, I guess, the abrasive Boston culture they wanted to capture with that song. They definitely did, but too jarring for you, Byron? Like, did it fit?
I can't separate it from the film after watching it. So maybe a little too much. But I enjoyed it. I remember it being in the trailer, and it really got me motivated to go see it.
I just think in 2006, maybe I wouldn't have rolled my eyes at that Dropkick Murphys ship it up to Boston twice in the movie. I probably wouldn't have rolled my eyes back then, but since then it's kind of become a trope that if you're going to reference Boston, you throw that in. As far as the rest, I did mention the human beings. I love that particularly violent scene where he's beating up the two guys from Providence. I really like the music in there. Last episode we were in, there was a cover or a version of a song that I did not like, and even though the version of "Comfortably Numb" that's used in this movie does have Roger Waters involved, I really didn't like its. When you love a song like "Comfortably Numb," which I believe is number 6 on the Wall track listing on disc 2, like this is one of those songs that like I fell in love with certain versions of it as I was growing up, and then I heard this version, and it unfortunately it took me out. Sometimes covers or reimaginings of songs, because this one was sung with Van Morrison. Like this was something that kind of took me out, but I was happy with everything else that was happening. So because of that, I didn't let it bother me too much.
So Comfortably Numb plays when Jack Nicholson throws a handful of cocaine over over his dates, which might be prostitutes for all I know, but over the back of them. So you were okay with everything else in that scene except for the comfortably numb.
I actually really liked. I actually really liked that scene. I really liked that scene. I think it's also a part of the scene when Billy and Madeline are undressing, about to do the deed. I think it kind of lingers into that scene as well.
It does. Yeah.
So that was good. I will say that
There's moments here where, in the movie, where ending the song abruptly, as if you just hit the stop button on your, what do the kids call it, iPod?
when you just kind of hit the stop button and it ends, and it signifies the end of a call or the end of a scene or the end of like a tense moment. That happens with like sort of the rock music. That happens with the opera music as well. I did prepare a little bit to talk about like my beliefs on the use of classical and or opera music in movies. And in this movie, I thought the opera didn't take away, but I also don't know if it added anything. But the use of how abruptly the songs stop as a filmmaking technique, as opposed to just having songs in the movie, but I found that really well done.
Well, so Comfortably Numb left you uncomfortably feeling in this one. And for me, the Gimme Shelter, like, I think this is the Martin Scorsese song. He definitely uses it in Goodfellas, and apparently he uses it in Casino as well. So this is
the third time. Yeah,
third time he goes back to it. So in fairness, if you do the flashback to that Vietnam time setting or whatever, you know what? Somehow that like something about that does kind of feel like TV sitcoms use wavy effects on the side of the screens.
Right.
The classier way of doing that is playing the Rolling Stones' "Gimme Shelter."
Gimme Shelter.
So,
yeah. I was unrelated. I was looking into overused movie songs for trailers, and I mean it unrelated. I'm not throwing shade at this, but I think "Gimme Shelter" is really starting to get to that point of like where it better be great if you're using it in a trailer, if you're using it in a movie,
or it should be about somebody who needs housing.
For instance, that's one of the three basic needs. The song I was thinking of that is currently overused is Edvard Grieg in the Hall of the Mountain King. Is just
that's fun.
It's a great song. I love it. I don't love it when it's in every other trailer. I think the worst use of it was in 2010's Dinner for Schmucks. So it's one of these things where this song has power, and especially if you've seen it like done live, and then when you throw it into, it was also in the trailer for Funny Games, which actually elevated that trailer. But Gimme Shelter, unfortunately, is getting to that point to where I'm like, oh man, if you're gonna use it, it better be a masterpiece. And I will say, Departed is so high on my list that I was not made uncomfortable by it.
Okay. Now, are you guys ready to hand out some awards?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, yeah. All right. MVP, Byron.
Jack Nicholson.
Nicholson. Makes total sense. Yeah. Dustin, MVP.
For me, it is Leo. It's Leonardo DiCaprio's acting. I really enjoy him in a role where things are a struggle, where things aren't coming easy to him, where things maybe aren't going great. He's got pressure on him. I think he portrayed a role of somebody needing help, maybe even needing shelter, needing drugs. Give me Billy Costigan over Great Gatsby. No,
yeah.
Give me a gritty Leo over Wolf of Wall Street. Know what I'm saying? Like this is him showing off his chops, and I think he's the MVP.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Martin Scorsese. I don't always like when he puts me in this world, but I think Byron nailed it. Adding the police side of the story and everybody spying on everybody, and to some point, Scorsese said this was his first movie with a plot. I like plots, so having a movie with a plot is a good thing.
Plots are good.
Yeah, plots are good. So good job, good on you, Martin Scorsese. This is your only movie to date that you've gotten Best Picture on, and I'm going to go with you on this one. So Best Supporting Actor, Byron. This one's tough.
Yeah, for me, I went with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah,
I found him really entertaining.
Yeah. He got nominated for an Oscar. That's a great choice. Dustin, Best Supporting.
And he should have been nominated because it was a great supporting role. And I knew one of you would choose it, so I actually went with Martin Sheen as Queenan. I think he maybe does the best of separating his work life and his home life. You do learn, like you see his house I think the scene I liked the most was when he welcomes Billy in and he says, let's get you something to eat. And he says no, which a lot of like loner characters do. Is like, no, I don't need anything. No, my wife left some supper out. Get you something to eat. Come on. It seemed like family. And that character, like Martin Sheen in that role, is actually one of the reasons why I went back and watched Catch Me If You Can, because he's also a father figure in that movie to one of the love interests in Catch Me If You Can. Another great scene that happens in a kitchen. Just kind of it made me feel good.
Nice warm moment there. I'm going to go with Mark Wahlberg as well, but Byron stated it, and so many good things have been said about him. I'm just going to give a nod to Alec Baldwin. He's a truly dislikable, despicable character in this one, and you do want somebody to punch him. Like, especially when he's like, the Patriot Act, I love it! And it's like, would somebody just punch this guy? Like, I mean, it's like, are you one of those fitness guys? Like,
that's a pretty good. When he is about to drench his face in the bowl of ice water, which I love anytime that's used in a movie. When he's like moving his head down and the camera tracks him, did you think he was about to do a line?
Yes,
That's what I expected.
I did.
Yeah, he says something like, "Yeah, you're a cop," and then I really thought he was gonna just whack a fat rail, and instead, no, it's just the ice water.
I didn't mention this earlier, but I think when we were talking about in the giant jerk debate, I feel like Alec Baldwin's character is thoroughly, unintentionally so a jerk. Like, I feel like Dignam goes home and he's like, I don't think like he's like a jerk at home. He just hates all the people that he works with and doesn't like all these departments and the politics of it. I feel like Alec Baldwin's character is 100% a jerk. He was a jerk in like middle school. He's a jerk now, and he'll be a jerk in the retirement home too.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, hidden gem, Byron.
I'm gonna go with Ray Winstone as Mr. French. That was the first time I'd ever seen that actor in any film, and he will always be a tough man. Like a tough guy.
Yeah, he was tough in this. Yeah. Great call, Dustin. Hidden gem.
Read my mind. That's mine too. Is Ray Winstone. I will say I've always appreciated like the number one or the henchman. He works until the very end. He is reliable. I believe even in the movie he says like, I'm reliable. And I think the good thing about this particular character as Mr. French is he's not dumb. I don't think he's dim-witted or dumb. And sometimes henchmen get that as not a crutch, but like as a flaw, like, oh, they're just not that bright. I think we have a couple not that bright guys in this movie. But he's not. He knows what he's doing. So he's my hidden gem too. Good pick.
My hidden gem's going to be a non-speaking role. We see DiCaprio walking through an airport walkway, and he's on the telephone, and he's emphasizing what a dangerous position he's in. And there's a little girl behind, standing with a man, and that little girl is Martin Scorsese's daughter. So that's I always like those familial connections. So
pink backpack.
Yep. Now recast, Byron, if you had to recast somebody, because it's a pretty strong cast. Who are you recasting and who are you going to put in their place? It's a tough thing to do, but it's got to be done. It's going to be wicked hot.
Here's what I'm going to do. I want to go full Boston and recommend that the role of Billy Costigan be played by Ben Affleck instead of Leonardo DiCaprio, and then we get the Ben Affleck v. Matt Damon.
Yeah.
That I think I've always wanted to see.
It's not as good of an actor, but you did sell it to me. I don't know that I want it in this movie, but I want it in a movie for sure. So you're right. Yeah, it's an interesting point and definitely authentic. So I appreciate the authenticity. DiCaprio's accent's not bad, but it's not genuine like Damon and Wahlberg's. What about you, Dustin? Recast.
I think we need on the organized crime side another known commodity. So I'm not trying to besmirch Mark Rolston as Delahunt, but I was thinking maybe if we had somebody like Walton Goggins in that role. I was also thinking about Paul Dano, but I don't think he was old enough yet to be somebody that had been inside the organization for too long. So I'm going to stick with Walton Goggins as Delahunt.
Oh yeah. He's a dislikable guy.
You like to dislike him.
Yeah.
Is what I'm. Yeah.
My recast is going to be. This is hard. I like Vera Farmiga. She did a great job. But we got to play the game, and so play the game I shall. I felt like there were some moments where she was forcing her Boston accent a little bit hard, And so I'm going to go with Sarah Rafferty. She's from the TV show Suits. I tried to find a Boston actress. Connecticut's about as close as I could get, unfortunately, but it's New England area. I think she has humor, charm, and presence on the show. And I would kick the tires on her at very least. She's got a good sense of backbone to her. And I would think that in an audition, I'd like to at least see her in there. So I can't say I want Vera Farmiga out. But if I had to, Sarah Rafferty is who I'm calling. Best shot, Byron.
I really enjoyed the panning shot. I mentioned that earlier, right after the title card, that shows Colin on the balcony of his apartment and Billy working out in his cell. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yep. There's a lot of fast cuts in that early part of the movie. A lot of fast cuts. Dustin, how about you? Best shot?
I may have tipped my hand earlier, but it's the breakfast scene with the hand in a plastic bag, how casual that's being done. And then there's a moment in this particular scene where Gwen is like, you hear the sound of a door closing, and Nicholson's character like looks up. Costello looks up and says, "What is it now?" And she looks back to him. She like straightens her jacket and goes, "Choir practice." And for a moment, you can see the Costello like doing like a calculation in his head. Maybe he's thinking of his schedule. Maybe he's thinking of the things important in his life. And choir practice. And it then goes straight back to the dismembered hand. And so like that particular like shot is great for me.
Okay, yeah. And I'm gonna go with the climax scene where we see Billy on the outside of the roof access doorway when Colin comes up and then he holds him at gunpoint. You see Billy's face, and then you see the door open, the camera pans to the left and then turns to capture that action of the two of them together, and they are meeting, and they've met before, but this time all cards are on the table, and now they're meeting. And so what a great moment it is, and the camera work reinforces that. Best scene, Byron.
My favorite scene was when Billy and Frank were discussing the identity of the rat in the gang at the bar. I thought Nicholson's facial expressions were priceless when he was pantomiming like a rat as he discussed it. It really looked like he was losing his mind. And I also loved Leo's expression when Frank dropped his gun and then picked it up and pointed it at him. Like the silent shock look on his face just felt really authentic, which makes sense since it was apparently ad-libbed.
That's mine as well, actually, and for sure. Dustin, what about you? Best scene?
For me, it is between Billy and Madeline when they are, when he is sort of in the chair and she is at work, and they're. I guess this is what he's court ordered to do. Not court ordered. Yeah. The scene where he is getting emotional, that ends in him requesting Valium, and then afterwards she kind of rushes after him. I thought his acting in that was great. I know that you had mentioned that the person that she shadowed like for the role said that she did everything wrong, but I think that's what made the scene great. Was there? This was kind of the beginning of what becomes their relationship, and I really do like seeing Leo act as someone who is maybe up against the ropes or needs help.
Yeah. Now, we've talked a lot about wardrobe, more than usual, actually, which was fun, but what's your top moment of wardrobe or makeup, Byron?
Yeah, I guess I tipped my hand too early, but again, Mark Wahlberg's hair is priceless.
Great. More on Mark Wahlberg here in a little bit, but Dustin.
This is Jack Nicholson wearing that same leopard print tie that you mentioned, but I don't remember the color of the shirt, but he's also wearing that with a houndstooth jacket. I don't believe it's a full houndstooth
like the check
suit.
Like the checkered kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Those
purple.
Particular checks.
He had a purple shirt with that, so it was a wild get up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that the Joker would wear.
Yeah.
So it was a striking scene, and but the wardrobe kind of shows his eccentricity.
I was gonna say, or somebody even crazier than Jack Torrance, or even crazier than the Joker, a Laker fan would wear.
Ooh, and that one
Shots fired.
That crazy Laker fan that sits next to Jack at whatever his name is or whatever his fame is. That guy is dressed like a chic scarecrow.
Yeah. Sorry for Laker fans, by the way. I just got to let
I'm
you know.
not.
Yeah.
No, we don't have to apologize for this, man. Enjoy your first round exit, LeBum.
My wardrobe moment's gonna go to Mark Wahlberg. There's where he and Alec Baldwin share a scene, and they're jawing at each other at the briefing in the government building. There, he has a tan shirt on, very crisp, dark brown pants, and his tie's got the diagonal black, brown, dark brown diagonal tie, and brown belt, and he's got his gun holsters prominently shown, even though he's in the middle of a government building on both sides, and they kind of look like suspenders. It's a very tough, almost 70s look. Like, I got a very Steve McQueen vibe off of him on this one. So all tan spectrum on this one, and I liked it. Yeah, gonna go with Dignam on this one. So change one thing, Byron.
I had seen a lot of fans of the movie talking about this, but a lot of people didn't like the rat at the end on the railing.
Yeah, it didn't bother me so much. 2 on the nose for you?
Yeah, I guess I'd take the rat out.
Okay.
I'd be fine with that.
Okay. There was a Kickstarter to take it out, and somebody got their money to do it, and then obviously it's not his rights to the movie to do it, even though he's capable of doing it. So then he had a cease and desist thing, so stop doing that. So so you can't go fix other people's movies. Sorry, Chad Robinson out there, wherever you are, you cannot go back and fix all 3 prequel movies to Star Wars. So no matter how much Kickstarter you get for it. So,
but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Yeah, I was gonna say more power to you. Dustin, change one thing for you.
I like this particular one. This is at the very end, not the rat, but right before it. End of the movie before pulling the trigger. The shot of the milk and the bagels spilling out of Colin's bag is, an important shot, perhaps. But when you see Dignam in the cleaner's outfit, with the booties on, you know what's going to happen. You know what is likely going to happen. So just end it before the trigger's pulled. Maybe even with the sound of the hammer going back, and then end it there.
Okay.
I'm not a filmmaker, but I thought to myself, ooh, that could, because I believe there were talks about a sequel where Wahlberg would be the star, and I thought to myself, like, this could present something. But I also came to the movie 15 years later. But yeah, I thought that could be cool.
My change one thing's going to be aggressive here, but Dignam needs to be there to shoot Colin in the elevator after. But I want Billy to get shot, but not in the head, and like in his stomach, where he can still get, like, he's wounded, but not mortally, and like he's going to make it, and then Colin gets shot. I feel like that's a Western kind of thing that I would like to inject here. Of crime destroys, but I kind of want good to prevail here. So I don't mind Dignam being the guy who shoots Colin. I just want it to happen, an afternoon or a day or whatever, however long that it takes to go to a grocery store before.
I wanted to bring this up when you said this earlier. The crime organization, with all of the deaths and the leadership being gone, and the mole inside of the police department being dead, it's not quite the same, but if the crime organization fails, is that the same as good prevailing? Because the good guys
I
do
think
win.
It is, because Costello is truly evil, like in every way, shape, or form. Even if you have an honor among thieves, he's not honorable. Like, he's truly, like, there's nothing you can like about Costello.
Yeah, in the end, law enforcement continues, and Costello's group is, at least the small group that we are seeing most of the movie, is eradicated. So it's not quite the same as seeing, like, the good guy walk into the sunset, but for the crime organization to fail, it's close to good prevailing. Really.
No, that's a good point. But I guess I didn't like watching Billy go down. So, but
no, neither did I.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a big change, but that's my change. Byron, best quote. A lot of good quotes here.
Yes. My best quote was from Dignam. My theory on feds is they're like mushrooms. Feed them crap and keep them in the dark.
Yep. Yes. That's a classic line. Yeah. Dustin, best quote.
And I'm going Dignam too. And mine is the guy who installed the cameras goes like, "Who do you think you are?" And Dignam responds, "I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy."
Yeah. Yep. And that would have been mine, but I've got a runner-up just in case. It was haunting in the beginning, especially once you know how terrible Costello is. When he goes, "I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me." And they're showing clips of not exactly the nicest clips of a neighborhood. So, haunting. So.
And a great quote in several different contexts. do you let your environment change you, or do you change your environment? Lesson.
Now, Byron, what would you give this movie on a 5-star scale with half-star intervals?
Solid 4.5. I
Yeah.
feel like
What knocked it down out of that top? What would make it a 5 for you?
I feel like if it had been a little bit shorter,
Yeah.
maybe trimmed a little bit more, I probably would have give it a perfect score.
Nice. Okay. Now, Dustin, what about you? What's your rating here?
I'm very lucky to have got to explore this movie like as a first time basis with the critical eye of this podcast, like kind of guiding me. This is a 4.5 star. It was a tour de force to watch. It earned all the accolades that it earned. It's not a perfect movie. I don't know a way in which it could be a 5-star movie. It's one of those that maybe and when I watch it again, maybe I say like this is a masterpiece. But I think when it comes to thrillers like this, once you know it, and I almost want to kind of keep it as I saw it the one time, it was impactful, it was very good, and then I kind of just leave it alone. But 4.5, a very high score for me.
Yeah, and I'm going to make it a straight run of 4.5, and I think I alluded to a number of times, just, Billy making it out of here probably would have gotten to a 5 for me, because the intricacy of the plot, the acting, the direction, everything's on point here, and I totally respect that it won Best Picture of the Year award. And, I do own this movie, but I would pull it out more often with Leonardo DiCaprio, maybe in the hospital, like, getting a thumbs up from Dignam while like you cue some like drop kick Murphys one more time.
Wow. Of course it would happen a third time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm laying it on a little thick here, obviously. I'm not saying they both need to have thumbs up with a freeze frame and a zoom out slow like from a 1970s TV show, but
it can't end worse than Stand and Deliver ended.
Yeah,
that was a bad one.
Yeah, it was. So I don't need that, but I do need I need something to pick me up, because when Scorsese said I had a hard time in post production doing this, I think that's why I don't pick this movie up more often. So but yeah. Now, Dustin, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
I'm here to help.
Yeehaw! We're rounding them up and headed out to the Wild West.
Okay, listen, all you lords and ladies and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, it truly pains me that because of the way we have our episodes dropping, you aren't going to hear Russell as the rootinest, tootinest, six-shootinest cowboy in the West. Instead, we're going to watch from 1956, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Russell, back to you.
So saddle up. We'll be doing that one next week, and I'm looking forward to that. Byron, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. We had a blast with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a good time.
And thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We want to invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. So subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at @movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun, but not free. So we invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Retro Movie Roundtable. Any contributions you make will make the show better, and we always appreciate you. So, as always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Dustin?
If you're gonna steal from Terry Benedict, you better goddamn know. This sort of thing used to be civilized. You'd hit a guy, he'd whack you done. But with Benedict, at the end of this, he'd better not know you involved, not know your names, or think you're dead, because he'll kill you. And then he'll go to work on you.